So I played Marvel's Avengers on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and it was also developed and published by Square Enix. And I'm just gonna get out of the way right now immediately. Marvel's Avengers is a very good game. It is definitely above average, and I mean is an excellent game. I was honestly expecting another train wreck of a movie tie-in game like the likes of The Incredible Hulk and those crappy Amazing Spider-Man games. Which, I mean, the first one wasn't terrible, but the second one was just awful looking. But no, Marvel's Avengers is actually a very solid, good game. I'm gonna go with the good and the bad for the context of this review because there is nothing ugly about this game. So, all of the good. The visuals are actually outstanding. They're really good. They're not The Last of Us Part 2, but they are far superior to most games on the market. The story is where this game shines. The story is outstanding. It is very character driven, and honestly, I like the matchups too. The story is basically the Avengers being together at the beginning and them hosting a Comic Con, so to speak. And this girl, Kamala Khan, she ends up winning a golden ticket, so to speak, to the event. And she goes and ends up being a catastrophe of epic proportions where bad guys invade and basically they ransack the entire event and things get blown up. And then from the prologue, it goes 5 years later. And then main characters are introduced, and it's basically a story of regathering. And I can honestly say that the story itself is very well written, it's very character driven, the action sequences are actually top notch and amazing. It's all well done. Like, I honestly was not expecting to give this game this kind or this amount of praise, but this game is a phenomenal game. Definitely pick up Marvel's Avengers. No matter how you play it, play this game. The story is top notch. Now, with that being said, I do have to say the first half is a lot better than the second half, but I'll get into that into the bad segment. So the visuals are outstanding. The story is actually very well done. The online component of it is actually a solid feature. They basically incorporated online additions into matchmaking within the story, and they have an online only part of it, and it's all solid. I still think the best part of this game is the story mode, and pertaining to the story mode, they also made it about half of just a regular action adventure game slash RPG. They have leveling up elements, and they have a pseudo open world. It's not a complete open world. Think of The Witcher 3, where it's kind of segmented into different locations, or like Dragon Age Inquisition. There's a war table, and it shows you set locations, and you travel to there and do this mission. But honestly, the missions themselves, the locations are pretty expansive, and it all looks great. And I played on my PlayStation 4 Pro, and the game looks amazing. It runs great. And like I said, the story mode is actually outstanding. Now on to the bad. So my number one criticism of this game is the gameplay. It's basically... Okay, so think of the Batman Arkham games, dumbed down and cheapened out a little bit more than those, and then mix in some Dark Souls element of timing your attacks, timing your dodges, and you basically have Marvel's Avengers gameplay. And it's not terrible by any means, but it's just kind of average. It's okay. It gets repetitive, and most of the time I just played through the story, so God forbid if I played the entire game through and through, how repetitious it would be, because honestly, they have all different powers individually, but honestly, you know, Iron Man, he flies, he shoots laser beams, Kamala expands herself and hits really hard and really big. Black Widow shoots guns, but honestly, it all plays the same. The same combos, same finisher button inputs and everything. Now, I mean, they have different animations, obviously, but otherwise, the gameplay itself is relatively the same. And on top of that, another bad I experienced at the very, very end of the game. So I finished the game, no issues whatsoever. And post-credit scene started, and about 30 seconds into it, my PS4 Pro overheated and then shut itself off. And I can assure you right now, this and Death Stranding are the only two games that have ever made my PS4 Pro run that hard where it had to shut off. And I don't know if it's the 4K upscaling or if it's my Pro, even though I just got it last year, I don't know. But it's only ever been two games, and I've cataloged about 150 games so far for PlayStation 4. Otherwise, this is actually a really good game. Marvel's Avengers is a great Avengers game. It's basically a pick-em-up story, and I have to say too, like I said at the very beginning, the matchups, who you correlate your storytelling and who you're around most, it's very well done because you wouldn't expect the team-ups. Like, for example, in the movies and in the story of Avengers and Hulk, the Hulk is usually the loner. Well, in Marvel's Avengers, the game, Bruce and Hulk, they're actually the first one that you encounter, and throughout the entirety of the game, you actually develop his character a lot more than you would expect. And you develop all of the characters, but Bruce's character development is so well done, and honestly, it's a little bit of a shame because Kamala Khan is a new character in the game, and her character is fleshed out, but hands down, they took their time and they did a great job with Bruce's character development. And, on the easiest difficulty, this game can be beaten in 6 to 8 hours. On the hardest, I'd say 10 to 12 hours. And honestly, they probably should have expanded the time of the story. The story itself is great, but they're also missing some elements of depth. Like, Bruce's character development is like all the way up here on my pedestal, and Kamala's is about 2 steps down. Everybody else is just kind of here. Like, you find out a little bit more about everybody else, and Iron Man, he gets a few funny quips of dialogue out, and that's great. That's his character. But the spotlights are definitely Kamala and especially Bruce / Hulk. And what I was saying earlier about the action sequences too, picture in the first Avengers film when Hulk freaks out and he goes after everybody in closed corridors and whatnot. Picture those kind of QTEs with amazing film work and also well-written sequences prior to that make you actually care about what's going on and if somebody's going to get injured, and it all just ties in very well. As for the second half of the game, it doesn't meander, but what it does do is it takes this kind of depth from the first half, and the second half, it's just kind of, let's simplify to just get to the end. And the final boss isn't really that special. I appreciated the cutscenes and the Avengers initiative and their action sequences in the final fight and everything, but honestly, the final fight itself, it's just kind of average. It's nothing special, really. The villain, honestly, I don't really know much about him, and he seemed cool. He seemed like a cool villain, but they didn't really flesh his character out either. Like, it's like they took a 6-hour story for, the main cast of the Avengers, which are 4 people, and they basically said, let's split them up, bring them back together, but let's focus on that one. And it's like, you did an outstanding job on him, but what about these other three? That one got some funny dialogue in, but the second half, it's like you were just kind of catching up and then finishing it. But otherwise, though, this is still a great game. So for me, Marvel's Avengers 2020 on the PS4 Pro is an 8 out of 10. Thank you.